All right, well, we'd like to welcome everybody to our July meeting for the Mid-Atlantic Renewable Energy Association. My name is Bill Hennessy. I'm acting president, and for folks that aren't familiar with our group, we're a volunteer organization in near Allentown, Pennsylvania. We've been active for about 15 years now, and our main focus is to save the planet, and we really like to encourage people on an individual level to make decisions that are good for themselves and good for the environment. And renewable energy is certainly a big part of that. And today we're going to have Bill Dougherty from the Eastern Midwestern sales manager for Outback Power. He's going to give a little talk on the how and why of solar and storage. For those of you that aren't familiar with Outback, they were started out in the Seattle area, and they were purchased last year, I believe, by Enersys, the headquartered in Berks County, the really large storage battery company. So they do have a local connection on that. And I guess without me talking too much more, I'd like to touch on a couple little things that'll be coming up. Phil, do you want to talk about next month's meeting and our book club?
Yes. Next, on August 13th, that's a Thursday at 6:30, we'll be hosting a book discussion of the book Nature's Best Hope by Douglas Ptolemy. And you don't have to have read the book, but it's a really easy, very pleasant read, very enjoyable read. I'd totally open your eyes to the kinds of things that are not going on and could be going on in your backyard and your front yard. And I recommend the book highly. We'd love to have you join us for the discussion, because even if you haven't read the book, because it's a great opportunity to share ideas and information about what kinds of plants you can grow in your yard to encourage the ecosystems rather than sterilizing them. So it's a great opportunity for anybody to join us. It's from 6:30 to 8 o'clock, and it's basically an open discussion for people to join. You can sign up on the website or on Facebook for that. Then we're going to get a chance on August 25th, I believe it is, for Douglas Ptolemy is actually going to speak on Zoom for the Maria audience and share a lot of the ideas. He's been he's a best-selling New York Times best-selling author, but he teaches down at the University of Delaware and has been doing lots of groundbreaking work with insects and biodiversity and the symbiotic relationships between plants and insects and animals. So I think you'll really enjoy that. And that will lead us into September, where we're still working on a speaker for that, but we plan on having one at the end of September. And then after that, in October, we're having our annual open mic night. And on the open mic night is an opportunity for the Maria community to share things that they've learned and projects that they've completed or are working on. This year's theme is on the impact of COVID-19. What sort of things has the sheltering in place, quarantining kind of activities prompted you that might be helping the climate? Ways that you have been reducing your energy use, reducing your waste, reducing your carbon footprint, and finding new ways to become more sustainable. So this change of lifestyle is obviously a hindrance, but it's also an opportunity, and that opportunity is one that perhaps people have come up with some innovative ways to adapt to it that reduce their carbon footprint. So what you can do is send an email to hello@themaria.org. Going to our website, you can find that information, and you just send us an email of what you'd like to talk about, and we'd love to include you in that program. Usually the talks are only about 5 minutes or so, and followed by a little bit of question and answer. And it's a fun meeting. We do this pretty much annually, and we'd love to have you join us for that.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, Phil. And that'll conclude. We'll have Zoom meetings for through October, and then November, December, we typically don't have meetings. And then in January, we're not sure if we're going to be Zooming again or if we'll be back to in person. We'll just have to wait and see on that. So going ahead now, go ahead, Bill, and we'll turn it over to Bill Dougherty from Outback Power on how and why solar and storage.
Great, thank you, Phil. Thank you, Bill. It's a pleasure to be presenting to Maria. I've known many of you for many years. Got involved with Maria probably 12 years ago when I worked for a local company. And Maria does a great job in the Mid-Atlantic region and beyond promoting sustainability and options and education. So really appreciate Maria as an organization. My hope tonight is that we can review some options of solar plus storage and how we can bring it mainstream going forward. And I hope everyone is safe and well in the current crazy environment we live in, as Phil was mentioning. Just to give you a quick background on myself, about 13 years ago, I started out in renewables. I worked for a local nonprofit that we focused on financing renewable energy and energy efficiency projects on the commercial side, and also ran a program educating regarding solar. And actually Vera and Bill participated as instructors in that program. And then I saw the big opportunities that were coming in solar in the state of Pennsylvania, specifically with the Sunshine Program, that I'm sure many are familiar with. So at that time, I started selling systems in the state of Pennsylvania for a Maryland-based installer. And things were going great with the Sunshine Program, specifically that incentive to help move solar along. A lot of job creation, a lot of investment into renewables in the state of Pennsylvania at that time. Unfortunately, the Sunshine Program was kind of drying up. I wanted to kind of branch out to more of a larger region. So at that time, I looked to sell solar panels actually, and I worked for a solar manufacturer, and I managed the East Coast, and then I was promoted to director of sales in the US. So I had the opportunity there to travel throughout the US, get an idea of different states and the directions they were heading. So about 4 years ago, I did see that storage was going to play a big part in solar going forward. And I saw the huge growth opportunities. So that's when I looked towards storage, had a great opportunity to work with Outback. I actually managed 27 states in the US and 2 Canadian provinces. So basically Texas up to Ontario and everything east. So I don't focus specifically on Pennsylvania, but I do have knowledge of what's going on here with storage in PA. And I'll provide some insight on that too. So let's jump into it. And I do approach this as a sales guy, even though I'm not going to be doing a sales pitch here. So you'll see the agenda here. So we're going to focus on the what and the why of solar plus storage, some basic solar storage options, and where the future of solar plus storage could go. 3 signs that solar plus storage is mainstream today. Some predictions, and I'm going to compare some other states here on the East Coast and how they're having success and maybe where Pennsylvania could go. And then we'll open it up for some questions. So I wanted to start off by showing this chart. And to me, this shows where storage specifically has gone and where we've come from. So you can see here in Q1 of 2020, over 200 megawatt of storage was installed. Here at Outback, I primarily focus on residential storage, and you can see in the light blue that the residential storage is represented very well, and the growth has been great in residential storage. You can see compared to 4 years ago, Q1 2017, when I really started looking into storage, you can see the great growth that has occurred quarter after quarter. And you can see the non-residential growth. This is really commercial and utility. That's growing very well too. And then the front of the meter is referring to utility size. And unfortunately with COVID in Q1, there was a downturn. But you can see the continual growth that is occurring here in the US with storage. So I think these are really powerful numbers here. And I did just want to quickly review what I'm referring to when I talk about solar plus storage. So in a residential home, and in this example, you have solar up on your roof. What do you do with that solar and that power? All right. Typically, in a grid-tied array, you would have the array, you would have the inverter, the main panel, and the grid. But when you have solar plus storage, some other factors come into play, specifically the batteries. So the PV is produced, it goes to a hybrid inverter that is bidirectional, and that's how it's different than a typical grid-tied inverter. And then it can interact with batteries. And those batteries can come into play if and when your utility goes down, or if you want to do time of use, for example. But the solar is charging up those batteries, and then the excess power that is produced from your array, in this example, would go to the main panel and the sub panel. The main panel is what it is, that's your typical electrical panel. But then in this design, the sub panel is for your critical loads. And this comes into play if you do lose power from the grid. You're going to focus on those critical loads in the sub panel, like your refrigerator, your well pump, some lights, and an example of in Florida, your air conditioning, because they need air conditioning down in Florida. So when the power does go out, you just focus on those critical loads. The batteries can provide power to your critical loads. One of the great features of storage when it comes to grid-tied versus grid-tied solar is when the grid goes down, typically grid-tied solar does not function. But with a hybrid inverter at 12 o'clock in the afternoon when the sun is shining, your solar is still going to produce. These hybrid inverters typically can net meter. We can actually pull power from the grid if allowed and charge up our batteries. And also the generator can typically charge up your batteries as well and provide power to the home. So this is what I'm referring to when I talk about solar plus storage. So here are some basic and general examples when it comes to storage or batteries that are on the market today. And there's a lot of technology that's out there. There's a lot of technology that's coming down the road. I focus on what's available today and what I can sell today. So on the bottom left-hand corner here, you'll see an example of a valve-regulated lead-acid battery. That system right there with the 12 batteries, they're 200 amp hours, they would provide about 15 kilowatt hours of usable power in a home. And that's a good bit of power when you're in a backup situation, just providing your critical loads. And then in the middle there, the larger product, that's what we consider a high capacity renewable energy battery. It is a lead acid battery. And these can be very large. And they can provide up to 65 kilowatt hours of usable power, which, for example, in Florida or up here in Pennsylvania, when you need to provide power for big loads or air conditioning, these systems can come into play. And then we also have flooded lead acid. And these do require water, distilled water. They do require additional maintenance. So typically, these are for off-gridders that do not mind maintaining a system and taking that time of maintenance. And then what's growing exponentially is lithium. And here's an example on the right-hand side of Simplify. And Simplify is a lithium phosphate that's available today. High density, high power, great cycle life, and by far, lithium is the most growing and fastest growing storage technology that's available today. So I'm going to show some comparisons there as well here. So I made up this nice little chart here to give kind of everyone a breakdown of when you talk about flooded lead acid, valve regulated lead acid, and lithium, where do they stack up against each other, all right, when it comes to storage? So in this example, this is only for 3 kilowatt hours of usable power. But this kind of gives you a summary of where each of the technologies are. So in the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see that flooded lead acid product. Again, maintenance watering is required, but for the cost of only about $500 per kilowatt hour, you get a lot of bang for your buck. And you can see a valve-regulated lead acid battery is about $1,000 for 3 kilowatts. And then an example of lithium with Simplify would be about $3,000 a kilowatt hour. So higher cost, but as you can see, you get a much better warranty and you get cycles. So with the flooded lead acid, you get about a 2-year warranty with it. Valve regulated about a 3-year. And in this example, lithium, you get about a 10-year product warranty on it. And then the cycles. With a typical flooded lead acid with a 50% depth of discharge, you get about 1,500 cycles, and that's warranted. So they should last much longer if they're maintained properly. And then with the valve regulated lead acid, you get about a 2-year product warranty. You get about 2,000 cycles. All right, so for the cost and the cycles with the warranty, valve regulated lead acid is a great option for emergency backup situations. Lithium, the one that's growing the most, high cycles, you get 10,000 cycles at 80% depth of discharge. So we can kind of compare the 3 options. And when it comes to time of use, or when it comes to an off-grid application for storage, lithium is a great solution because of the cycles and the warranty. So you don't mind paying that higher cost. But when it comes to emergency backup for your home, for example, valve regulated lead acid is a great solution because of the lower cost and the cycles, because you're really only going to cycle these maybe 10 times a year. So cycles are not as critical when it comes to emergency backup. So I figured I'd show everyone that chart just to give you a little comparison. And here's kind of a chart showing next year and in the future what storage chemistry and technologies could be used. I think lithium is going to be more than 43% going forward. But there's absolutely still a spot for valve regulated lead acid, and carbon valve regulated lead acid represents about 34% of this projection. Flooded lead acid, 20%. And then that new technology that's coming out represents about 3%. So this pie chart gives you a kind of a good summary of what we can expect going forward. So why do homeowners need solar plus storage today? There's 3 main reasons. One is avoiding time of use. Here in Pennsylvania, there's some areas that have optional time of use. And what time of use is when the utility from 4 to 9 p.m. typically would charge you more for a kilowatt hour. So what in California, for example, they're doing is they're storing their power throughout the day in their storage, and then at night from 4 to 9 o'clock to offset that high cost of a kilowatt hour, they're using their storage, and they're not net metering their extra solar capacity. So we're going to see time of use hopefully rolling to the east, because this is one of the big drivers in California today with time of use. And then here on the East Coast, backup power, both planned and unplanned for outages. This is another big reason why people go with storage. So in California, they have rolling blackouts with the fires that are occurring in Northern California and Southern. PG&E had a big issue with that. So now there's rolling blackouts in California. When the winds get above a certain level, they shut down the grid. So people need solutions and they don't want to run a generator. But here on the East Coast, increased flooding, fire, and extreme weathers due to climate change is increasing and occurring more and more. So people are looking for that emergency backup option. And unfortunately, with COVID, I have seen a big increase, and if you want to call it the prepper community and the resiliency demand. So demand has absolutely increased in Q1 and Q2 here as a result of COVID. And also the third reason or main reason why people and homeowners go with storage is if you're building a cabin in the middle of the woods, do you want to pay the utility 50 grand to run the electrical wires? Or do you want to set up a storage system in your home, have independence and resiliency, and save money in the long run and produce your own power? So there are three reasons why homeowners and the benefits that homeowners receive with storage. So I figured I'd just quickly show a typical residential grid-tied system, the size of the battery bank. So typically between 6 and 10 kilowatt hours of usable power is the battery bank size. And the purpose, as I mentioned, emergency backup and time of use, depending on where you're at. And the technologies that are used, valve regulated lead acid and lithium. So an off-grid residential system with solar plus storage, you can see the battery bank size is larger because you're powering up typically more loads. So it's between 6 and 15 kilowatt hours of usable power. And then the current technology that's being installed that I see is lithium, valve regulated lead acid, and flooded lead acid. And I absolutely have seen an uptick in off-grid applications since I've been at Outback, starting 3 years ago for sure. So when it comes to storage and where we've come from again and where we're going to go in the future, we can see here the estimates of the annual storage installations that are going to occur. In 2020, it's estimated that a little over 1 gigawatt of solar plus storage is going to be installed. And again, I'm focused on the light blue residential. So you can see that continual step up of storage that's going to be installed, hopefully here in the US. And by 2025, the estimate is 6.9 gigawatt of solar plus storage being installed. In front of the meter, utility represents a large portion of that, but it's great to see the residential storage just increasing year over year. And this expectation is great. And then let's talk numbers in general, because when I see people or politicians promoting fossil fuel and going back into the well of fossil fuels, it just boggles my mind. Because when you see the growth and the economic benefits that is going to lead to job creation in storage over the next 5 years, it's awesome. So in 2020, about $1.5 billion is estimate to be spent in solar plus storage installations. And then we're looking at until 2025, almost $7 billion. So when fossil fuel, specifically coal, is going backwards and storage and solar is ever increasing, it would be great if we could focus our efforts on educating and providing the necessary tools for people to go into the storage field and the renewable field and continue that growth of storage going forward. So I see it every day, and it's ever growing. even my 3 years at Outback, things have changed in this short period of time. So to me, there's 3 clear signs that solar plus storage is going mainstream. And sign number 1 is everybody's got a battery to sell. Most of us heard of Tesla, I'm sure. Generac, Sunrun, Enersys. These huge companies are coming out with their own solutions or are starting to install storage more. Tesla has the Powerwall. Generac, a traditional generator manufacturer, last year got into the storage field. So they see this huge growth potential. Sunrun, one of the largest installers in the US, just recently purchased Vivint, another large installer. So now Sunrun is the largest. They're jumping into the solar plus storage field. So when you have these big players getting into storage, that's a great sign that storage is becoming mainstream. Then sign 2, utilities and policymakers. They see the benefits. I'm sure many of you have seen this before. This is referred to as the duck curve. And as more solar was being installed, utilities started to see a challenge. So in a typical residential home, the usage of power is pretty consistent over the evening. And then when everyone wakes up in the morning, gets ready for work, there's a little bump. But then they go to work, they use less power, and that's when solar's kicking in during the day. And then when solar's producing the most, people aren't using power, but when they come home, there's a huge surge. And the utilities have to kick in their coal-fired, fossil fuel burning peaker plants. And these are expensive to maintain, and they obviously create pollution. So one of the solutions that utilities are coming up with now is the recognition that storage can meet and help out with this need. So that solar that's produced during the day, if you store it up, and when homeowners come home, they use their power, and if you're a utility, you can incentivize that homeowner to do that. It's a win-win for everybody. So it's great to see utilities jumping into this field as well. And I got 2 great examples of it going forward here in Massachusetts and New York. So there's so much policy that's happening today when it comes to storage and solar in general. So I just picked out the most recent that I've seen. So recently, House Democrats, they introduced and passed a bill for the Moving Forward Act. So $1.5 trillion invested in economic growth with a focus on curbing pollution as well. So part of that, 5-year extension of the federal ITC, which is great to see because this year was the first time it stepped down to 26% on the residential side, 22% next year, and then it disappears in 2023 for residential. And then the ability also to take 85% of the tax credit upfront in a payment, which will help with the cost of investing for the homeowners. And then it was great to see the Democratic potential nominee, Joe Biden, commit to the clean energy future, $2 trillion in infrastructure and clean energy, with targets on carbon pollution-free power and net zero. So this is an acknowledgement, I feel, from Biden, the recognition that climate change is an issue and that job creation can happen when you invest in renewables for everyone involved. So the third sign is safety is becoming standardized. So when Bill started installing solar 30 years ago, there were not a lot of regulations, I'm sure. But now, with storage being standardized, and for example, UL 95 compliancy, where the whole system has to be regulated and UL certified, pass fire tests, and meet certain standards, this is going to make solar plus storage safer. So you're not piecing together a bunch of different products and hopefully they're working together. So this compliancy of standardizing requirements is another sign that storage has hit the mainstream, and we're going to see more compliancy going forward. So some predictions. We're going to kind of shift gears here. Some prediction of where the solar plus storage market could go in the future. And when it comes to solar and storage, you should really look west, because California, Hawaii, they're truly leading the push here. And if we're having this conversation in 5 years, it's going to be totally different when it comes to storage. So it's ever changing, it's rapidly changing. People are looking for more efficiency. They're looking for protection against outages to save money and to be more sustainable. So storage can absolutely help out with that. You know, I'm excited to see and to hopefully see when solar plus storage is treated like heat pumps and air conditioners. So my question is going to be in the future, when these solar plus storage systems, when these large inverter and battery companies, when they start offering batteries, storage, inverters, and solar modules together, kind of like Tesla is today. And I think it's going to become more popular. And one of the reasons for this is because in California, there's something called Title 21. And this requires, in certain areas, when a new home is built, that a minimum 2.7 to 5.7 kilowatt of solar is installed on the home. So it's mandatory. Now, my hope is eventually California will implement that storage is also a requirement for this. So again, this is going to be another driver, another push of storage, and it is just going to become more common for everyone. Which is great to see. So as I had mentioned, time of use, this is going to be big for everyone and all the utilities going forward. The question is, when is it going to be mandatory in your area or in your state or in your utility? So with time of use and the advantages to both the homeowner and the utilities to not having to fire up those peaker plants, hopefully more incentives are created for solar plus storage going forward. And eventually, like in Hawaii, I feel that net metering will be replaced. And outside of Hawaii, it's most likely to be time of use, because today in Hawaii, you cannot net meter because so much solar is installed. Basically, provide power back to the grid and receive a credit when I refer to net metering. So time of use is the key to storage going forward. Now, we will see an increase in cost as well when it comes to storage in a typical PV array, because when you add storage, you're basically doubling the cost of the products and the labor associated with storage. So overall, general solar installation cost will increase, but it's providing additional benefits to offset time of use, to help out with resiliency, and to provide that backup power. So there's absolute benefits when it comes to storage. And we kind of hit on this before with Tesla and Generac coming out with their own solutions, but we are going to see more and more all-in-one solutions coming out from battery companies and inverters. Prior to the purchase by Enersys of Outback, I worked for an inverter company that sold batteries. Now I work for a battery company that sells inverters. So I feel that more and more of this is going to occur going forward. And this is an example of testing to make sure that going forward, solutions can be provided on the lithium side. So today, there's a lot of solar arrays and PV installations on people's homes. One of the frustrating parts to homeowners is when power goes out from the grid, their grid-tied PV array is not working. So one of the solutions for that is AC coupling. And if you can AC couple to that existing system that you have on your home, add batteries, provide that emergency backup, and it will give your array the ability to function when the grid is down. So there will be a bump up in AC coupling installations for a short period of time. And then eventually, when we've kind of worked through those existing systems that are there, DC coupling is going to dominate the market because we're not going to have to retrofit as many systems like we are today. AC coupling has increased significantly in demand over the past year or so. So now we're going to do a little shift. We're shifting towards states and with the ultimate goal of what Pennsylvania could do going forward, possibly. So in this example, this is behind the meter, residential. And you can see how incentives, time of use, and policy counts when it comes to what states are doing. So in this chart, you can see that California is obviously dominant in the green. And Arizona is going to play a big part going forward because they have a lot of time of use in Arizona. That's going to be mandatory. And then Hawaii, as I mentioned, there's no net metering, so it's basically self-consumption. But here's the interesting part to me, and it's New York. Because New York has created very aggressive programs and policies for solar and storage. You can see how they're expected to grow and become a big player in the storage market going forward. So what have they done and what has New York done to help push this along? And they surely are on the East Coast leading the charge. So in December of 2018, New York's Climate and Leadership and Community Protection Act was passed, where it's setting goals and targets for carbon-free electricity, net zero electricity, and most importantly for me, the 3 gigawatt of solar plus storage capacity target they have in 2030. And this is one of the most aggressive that any state has come out with. On the residential side, a lot of this is focused on utility, but on the residential side, LIPA, which is Long Island Power Authority, has a really great program that focuses on residential storage. Again, utilities are starting to understand that not only at peak when people come home from work, but like now, and we've had a heat wave here in Pennsylvania. People are using their ACs, keeping them running when they go to work. And utilities are receiving that peak even during the day. So what LIPA has set up is a program where when homeowners install that behind the meter storage system in their home, the utility, through a third-party aggregator, is going to pull power from that residential battery, pull power from it, and actually pay the homeowner for using their power. They're going to give you a heads up when this is going to occur. It's not going to be random. They would not do it prior to a bad storm coming through or a flood. So this is a really aggressive program that LIPA has created. And actually, I see here that I got NYSERDA. I mixed up the slides, so I apologize for that. So this is a great program that could be an example of where Pennsylvania could go, whether it's PPL, PICO, MedEd, to help incentivize themselves to not fire up those peaker plants and incentivize homeowners to have storage as well. And then another example of this is Massachusetts, where Massachusetts has a very similar program, and they've implemented policies to increase storage. They have a goal of 1 gigawatt by 2025, and they've launched the SMART program. And it's very similar to the LIPA program, where when a homeowner has storage, they will pay you to pull that power, and they can do it actually more often in the SMART program. And you can see the chart here on the right-hand side, where in the summer months, they can actually pull 30 to 60 events, they call them, pull power 30 to 60 times for 3 hours. And they can pay you up to $225 per kilowatt for that. So that's a nice chunk of money, and that's going to help with return on investment for these homeowners. And then in winter, it drops down for sure, but this is to offset on those really cold days when homeowners are using more power. So these are examples of programs that states and utilities are implementing to help push storage forward while benefiting the utility in many ways. All right. So this is really cool for me, and this is where I think things are going to go. So in Southern California Edison, a utility in California, when it comes down to it, solar typically always beat the ROI investment of solar plus storage. But when you throw time of use into the mix, it flops. So for the first time ever in SCE, solar plus storage in terms of ROI beat out standalone solar. And this is a great example of time of use. All right, so March 1st, 2019, voluntary time of use structures. SCE changed and shifted the time of use that was from 12 to 6. They changed it from 4 to 9 p.m. when people are coming home at night. So residential homeowners storing up that power, and the utility increased the cost of a kilowatt hour to 24 cents. And in the summer, 21 cents in the winter. And then they incentivized the homeowners with off-peak and lowered that utility rate from 8 to 4 p.m. where they're going to be storing solar. So for the first time ever in the US, solar plus storage in terms of ROI beat out standalone solar because of time of use. So as I had mentioned, policy starts west and rolls east. Well, if the Midwest, Canada, the East Coast can start implementing similar programs, this is when solar plus storage will become even more mainstream here on the East Coast and in Pennsylvania. So PA, you know, where we're at today, surely there's room to grow. Today we have net metering, we have SRECs, we have the Renewable Portfolio Standard, 2004. Governor Ed Rendell at the time rolled out very aggressive goals for the state. But that was 2004. So we need to progress a little more in my mind when it comes to requirements. And then of course we have the 26% federal ITC right now, the tax credit. So how could PA grow and where is it possible? What I see in other states are, for example, property tax exemptions, sales tax exemptions, and low income programs focused on solar plus storage to help out those that really purchasing solar plus storage systems will be hard. And maybe we could readdress the RPS to add a storage component to it. But to me, the big three, depending on where PA would go, would be whether that's programs like the SMART program or the NYSERDA program with LIPA, time of use in like Southern California has. And then, I mean, should we roll out another state-funded renewable energy program like the Sunshine program? And that's the big question there, because utilities are starting to see the benefits of storage. They're understanding that you don't have to fire up your fossil fuel burning coal plant, and it has job creation. And what I've seen from many is that with job creation, when it comes to renewables, it can offset and replace coal, because coal is a dying industry. Even though the current administration has touted clean coal, I don't know what that is, but when it comes down to it, there's less than 50,000 jobs when it comes down to it in coal today. Huge coal burning peaker plants are being shut down throughout the US. It's an opportunity to retrain those people that are in the coal industry today. Pennsylvania has about 4,500 people in coal today. Well, wouldn't it be great to retrain those people and people that have lost their jobs and retrain them, retool them to work in the renewable energy field, to invest in Pennsylvania, to benefit the environment when it comes to sustainability and a positive reinforcement, providing sustainability, resiliency, and then a cleaner environment. So there are some of my goals and hopes of the state of Pennsylvania. So at this point, I'm pretty much done, Bill and Phil, so let's open it up to questions. I think you guys are muted.
Okay, we had initially a question regarding electric vehicles and the vehicles to as part of the storage solution. Do you want to comment on that, Bill?
Well, when it comes down to it, I'm really not involved in the electric vehicle aspect of storage. There's absolutely very positive things that are happening with EV. It's absolutely growing, and there's going to be a great demand for it going forward. But I typically focus on residential storage with batteries.
Okay. Yeah, and I would like to mention that, you know, just with the questions, if you could ask maybe one question, and if there's a follow-up to that, we'll go with that, and then go on if someone else has some questions. I would want to make a quick observation, though, on one of your slides with the costs there. We're installing simplified batteries on a job right now, about 30 kilowatt hours, and our cost is running about $900 a kilowatt hour. So if we look at, it's still maybe about 3 times the cost of flooded lead acid, but I think your graph had some older numbers there in terms of, you know, dollars per kilowatt hour bill. And then the other thing, you know, we want to look at that, remember this is with the utilities that are pushing for their own storage systems, is that they can put that into their rate base and charge people, you know, for that, in the sense like you're buying a power plant. Where if we keep it, you know, locally residential, you're going to have more jobs for that. You're going to have more distributed energy, which would be more efficient in moving your electrons. And you know, the investment that you make will be yours to reap the rewards. You know, again, you put the money in, but solar is going to win at the end because the fuel was free. So folks got some questions. We'd like to hear them.
Looks like we've got most of the questions that have been brought up on chat. Is there anybody that would like to ask generally?
I would be really happy to ask a question. This is Carl Grumwald. It's nice to be part of the meeting today. I wanted to ask, when you were closing out the talk about job creation, do you see it as a case of kind of like build it and they will come, like by having all these people get enrolled in training programs and then the jobs will just be created out of the knowledge base of people that have that training? Or do you see a definitive market for people with those skills? Like which will come first, and how do they interact, if you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, absolutely, Carl. So, I mean, I can see it in the state of New Jersey, New York and Massachusetts, where, and we experienced it here in the Sunshine Program, where when you initiate a program and there's the demand, then what you do is you train people to meet that demand. There's going to be a slow and a rapid catch-up that's required. But when we saw in the Sunshine Program here in Pennsylvania, solar was absolutely booming. And you could hardly, I'm sure Bill could hardly even keep up with the installations. And the goal was to train a bunch of people to be able to install solar. And you saw the price of storage of solar come down. So in states like New York, in states like Massachusetts, that's occurring today, where there's programs in place, there's incentives that are positively affecting storage, and more people are being employed. So I see it as set up the program first and the jobs would come after.
And you say that because it'll drive the price down because it makes for more competition and lowers the cost to install.
Absolutely right, because we saw specifically in Pennsylvania, the cost of solar being installed dramatically decreased for sure. And like we're seeing today with storage, and especially with lithium costs. Now, Bill, you had mentioned it's 900 bucks a kilowatt hour. I sell Simplify, the battery itself. So, you know, we won't get into the numbers there, but the numbers are coming down significantly when it comes to lithium. And we see that actively occurring in that as well, Carl. So great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is Chuck Coe. Bill?
Chuck, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I really enjoyed your talk. I learned a ton. And I'm just curious as to what the percentage cost, if you break the cost stack down between solar and the panels, between the storage and the generation. Is it 50-50? Is it 30-70? Is it?
Well, it depends.
Because the panel costs have come down so much.
Yeah, no, I understand. There's no general rule of thumb, and it depends what type of panels you're using, what type of solutions that you're using. It's a general rule that when you add storage, it adds 50%. Now, is it truly 50-50? It depends. If you're using flooded lead acid, for example, we saw the cost of flooded lead acid. That's going to be considerably cheaper, right? But if you're using lithium, it's going to be more expensive. If you're using sun power panels, which are very expensive, that can skew it as well. So do I think it's 50-50, Chuck? I don't. I think, you know, batteries, depending on which ones, would represent probably like 40% of the cost of the system.
Oh, really? Okay. Less than half. But anyway,
Yeah.
so here's the issue, right? If you go back 5 years, today you can get solar plus storage for what you paid for just solar 5 years ago.
Absolutely. I remember the first system I sold, and this was probably 10 years ago. It was a 10 kW ground mount system, no storage involved, and it was $80,000. And now that's still that 10 kW ground mount system, you know, you might be able to get for $40,000, you know, depending on, again, products. So yeah, system costs have come down significantly, and we're going to see that applying to storage as well when more and more technologies come out and more people are installing storage. For sure, Chuck.
Okay, we have a question from Mike Stelz. Does PPL time of use make sense for residential solar before considering the addition of storage?
Well,
And I guess that keeps coming back because we used to have time of use years ago, and then it kind of dragged along and people kept saying it's coming back, and it never seems to quite come back.
Sure, sure. Well, PPL, you know, and here on the East Coast, the utilities, so cost of utilities cheap. It's 13 cents a kilowatt hour pretty much basically in PPL. So really, I'm going to turn it kind of a different way, Mike, and not only just the ROI benefit, but what about the additional benefits that come along with storage and solar when it comes to the environment as well as adding resiliency for emergency backup for your home? So what's the cost of that? Depends on your situation. But right now in PPL, I don't technically know the time of use rates or what they would be. Again, you got to remember, I got a huge area, 27 states in Pennsylvania, in the U.S. So I don't know all the different rules and regulations in each utility. So I'm not sure about that answer, to be quite honest with you.
This is Ron Celentano. I could probably answer that a little bit.
Yeah, Ron.
How you doing? So, I believe the peak, on peak is 2 to 8, but it does have a seasonal on peak period change. So obviously storage could help a little bit in the darker hours in the winter. Pico is proposing a time of use rate, and that one is actually 2 to 6. It's a very narrow peak window, which is great, and they're estimating about 19 plus cents just for the energy part of that, and then an off peak from 6 to midnight, and then a super off peak for midnight to 6 in the morning, and that's dropping down your 5 plus and 4 plus cents. So you're really dropping way down, and they want to have that off peak for EV charging. That's the idea behind that. So this may actually be kicking in gear within next year, possibly, if they get through it.
That would be great to see. And Ron, it's great to see that you're on this this presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate the presentation too. Thanks.
This question from Jay. The hardware costs of an installation only make up about 35% of the total install cost. The rest are soft costs. So added soft costs with storage would be important as well. So can you kind of talk about the soft cost side of storage?
Well, I mean, when it comes down to it, when you're adding storage and batteries to a system, it takes a more skilled individual, as well as it takes more time. So, we're kind of getting bogged down in the numbers because there's so many different scenarios that come into play because of, are we talking about labor in California? Or are we talking about labor in Pennsylvania? What type of materials and products are you talking about? So I don't want to get bogged down in the cost of the numbers because they always vary for wherever you are.
Okay, but basically you're saying it's a sort of a higher, the soft cost is going to be higher, particularly in the early stages of storage, because it takes a little higher skill level and more hardware. Correct.
It does. I mean, you're adding batteries, but then the skill set that's involved, people like Bill that know how to work with batteries, they're 1 in 10 out of solar installers, especially here on the East Coast. California is different than Hawaii, but the skill set that's involved with an installer that's a professional that knows how to install storage, they're harder to find here in PA on the East Coast for sure. So their cost should go up, their skill set.
Okay. And this one from Zig, can you explain the difference between DC and AC coupling?
Sure. So when you have a traditional grid-tied array, all right, it produces AC power, and then it's converted so you can use it in your home. And when you want to add storage to a traditional grid-tied array, a solution to do that is when you have an AC coupled inverter that's bidirectional and you AC couple to that inverter. So what you can do then is function with that grid tied inverter and have a bidirectional inverter with the hybrid inverter. So you're not changing that grid tied inverter to an AC coupled and to a hybrid solution. You're AC coupling a hybrid inverter to that grid tied inverter to make it bidirectional, to make the hybrid inverter bidirectional to be able to function with batteries. Don't know if that answered the question.
What do you think, Zig?
Well, that was a little bit hard to understand.
Okay.
But thanks for trying.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll go back to my picture here. So traditionally, with a grid-tied PV array, you would just have, depending on if it's 2000 NEC or 2017 or 14, you would have a traditional PV system with an inverter, the loads, the main panel, and the grid. But when you want to make it bidirectional, you have to attach a hybrid inverter that is bidirectional to that grid-tied inverter. And that's what they consider AC coupling.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Sure, Zig.
Yeah, can I ask an additional question?
Sure.
Well, I have a little storage in my house, just 2-3 kilowatt hours. But when I was thinking about which type of batteries, I decided to go for lead acid because of the recyclability of them. Do you see any developments in the future for lithium ion or lithium phosphate that the material in there can be recycled?
Sure, Zig. So that's a question that people always go to when it comes to lithium. And Zig, you made the right decision when you were considering recycling, because lead acid batteries are 99% recyclable.
Yes.
And the question is, going forward with all this lithium that's being installed, what's going to happen and how is it going to be recycled? Now, another thing with lead acid, Zig, when you go to recycle that, you're going to get paid. Not a lot of money, but you're not going to have to pay to recycle it. With lithium today, when you do try to recycle it, and if there is a facility to accept it, you have to actually pay for that lithium to be taken off your hands. And they're still absolutely developing some recycling programs when it comes to lithium. I do see a couple different ones popping up, but I haven't seen anything really solid that really makes me comfortable with the future of lithium recycling. Now, that being said, it's such a huge market. This is capitalism. Somebody's going to come up with a solution that's viable going forward, that I would be comfortable with.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zig.
Okay. Bill, did you have another question?
There was a question about solar panels. I think someone was asking. So, yeah.
Go ahead.
I think it was on your chat.
Yeah. Well, I thought you were going to ask it. Yeah. The question was, are we going to see some improvements in the panels in efficiency?
So, I kind of relate this also to batteries, where I've been now at this for 12 years, and I've seen a slow uptick in efficiency increasing over the years, about 10 to 15 watts a year. So I don't think there's any silver bullet that's coming out when it comes to efficiency with solar panels, but I think we are going to continue to see the slow and steady increase of 10 to 15 watts a year of increased efficiency when it comes to solar panels. They're always talking about, hey, what about this new technology that's coming out? Well, I've been in it 12 years and I've just seen the slow and steady increase in the efficiency. And I expect that to continue.
Yeah, just to touch a little bit on that. If 10 years ago you could be installing panels that were 200 watts and they would cost about $5 a watt for that panel. Now you can install panels that are 400 watts and you can go out and you can buy them for about 60 cents a watt for that. So it's the numbers have just actually flipped. It's really it's slow but steady, but over the years they're really adding up. It's amazing what you're seeing in terms of efficiencies and the panel makers with that, and how their costs are coming down.
And Bill, you make a great point. Not only does the efficiency go up, but the price is coming down because of the mass production of modules. That's for sure. And when I was selling PV modules, that was always a challenge to be on the back end of it, of the continued lower of cost of solar panels. It was tough. It really was, but it was great for the industry for sure.
And there's the other side of that was Ron talking on the degradation. There's a lot of issues that are concerning folks. I just saw an article in South Africa because of the back sheets that were on, very low quality back sheets. Those the solar panels were just actually just breaking down big time, and they weren't getting even 10 years out of them. So it's always this thing about keeping up that low cost, high quality, and low degradation is going to be important.
Well, Ron, the old saying, you get what you pay for, right?
Yeah, it's hard to know though. Like, you rely on a product name, a brand name, right? And that's what we gotta hope for is okay. And no one comes out. It's a low price. You don't know anything about it, so it's always a question whether you should go for it or not. And that's maybe the danger.
Well, yeah, then there's the other thing if, people that are buying large and putting in large installations, module manufacturers are breaking down into like a tier 1, tier 2 type of module. And so if you stick with the tier 1, which will be where the big money is investing in those modules, that you can have a lot more confidence in the quality of what you're getting than if someone is just saying, oh, I got a great deal on this small startup company. So, again, I think you stick with the big names that have gone, through the vetting and through the years, and they know how to make a good module, and I think they're always working on reducing costs.
Yep, agreed.
Bill, there's a question too, if you could explain this chart where you're showing all the components, what their functions are. This was your detailed chart here with the...
Okay, the one I'm on here, great.
Yeah.
So in this example, you have solar up on the roof, just say, for example, it's an 8 kW. And actually here, this is for 2014 NEC. This is a combiner box. Basically, it has arc fault detection built into it, as well as, if you see the little red button on the side, that's an off switch for the firemen and women to be able to shut off the array in case there's a fire when they're up on the roof. And then on the bottom right-hand side here, this is a rapid shutdown initiator that typically goes next to the meter. That is also another way for the firemen and women to be able to shut down a system when they're on the ground. Now this is 2014 NEC, and I figured a question might come up, so I didn't want to go into too much detail because this could be a whole presentation on its own. But in the top right-hand corner, you can see NEC 2017. Now what they've done is they moved from system level rapid shutdown, which is in the picture, to module level rapid shutdown, where depending on the size of the solar panel, you have to install this, an example, an IMO fire raptor. And it has a sensor in it that if the temperature of the roof, I think, goes above 185 degrees, then that would shut down the array to protect the firemen and women in case there was a fire. And so these are examples, again, of compliancy and safety that are increasing. Now, a lot of people were concerned about, hey, you're adding additional components to this array because you're adding one IMO fire raptor for every module basically on an array. So there was some concern about that. But I really haven't seen any issues or failures with an IMO fire raptor. This is a third-party product, not an Outback product. So again, another example of compliancy and not barriers, but challenges that are in front of people today to continually keep up with the ever-changing solar storage market. Then I have to move my system here. Okay, good. And then you have the inverter here. It's a hybrid inverter, so it's bidirectional. And then batteries, the sub panel, which is for the critical loads, the main panel, which hopefully everyone has in their home, and a generator that, depending on the hybrid inverter, some and most of them operate directly out of the box with a generator. Outback does, for example. But a generator is a great backup to the backup, basically, of the storage. So I hope that kind of answers that question as well.
Okay, here's a question. Do you see any interesting innovation in what residential installations identify as essential loads and their management? Batteries heighten sensitivity to energy efficiency.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when it comes down to it, the innovation's happening on the lithium side. And there are a bunch of new products that are coming out to manage the whole home when it comes to load management and more efficiency. So there are a lot of products that are out there that are coming out, and it's kind of like batteries where which one's going to hit and which one's going to be successful. I do not sell any of those products directly, Phil, so I cannot directly comment on the new technology or existing that's coming out there, but I know there's a whole bunch on the market today.
Yeah, if I could add something, just
Sure.
Going forward on this, the ideal situation is that you're going to eliminate the essential loads panel. And then what happens is you're going to buy a main panel that'll have what you call smart circuit breakers that will either be able to see how much, in an emergency, how much power is available, and the breakers will regulate themselves based on, what you've input, and they'll still at the same time isolate from backfeeding to the grid. So again, I think, going forward, we don't know, where it's going to be, but there's Schneider Square D is actually coming out with some stuff now, and they're one of the really biggest players out there. So Eaton, I think, is also looking at that. So 10 years from now, you won't even have an essential loads panel. It's conceivable that way.
Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, 5-10 years from now, storage is going to be totally different. And that's an example, Bill, of innovations that are going to push storage more into the mainstream.
Okay, here's a question that I think might generate a little discussion. If a homeowner has an electric vehicle, wouldn't it be excessive to add a storage battery in the home?
Excessive to add it?
Yeah, I think basically what it boils back to is how much power do you have in your car and how much power do you need in your home?
Yeah, when, all the time I get questions, well, I have a 4,000 square foot home. How much power do I need? Well, I have no idea. What are you trying to back up? Are you trying to do your whole home? Do you have a hot tub, electric heat? So everything's relative, when it comes down to it. So when people ask me how much storage I need, well, I tell them bottom line, and this is one of the keys to designing storage, is you have to calculate your loads, and you have to know exactly what your loads are. For an example, a refrigerator. Is it a 700 watt refrigerator? It's going to be on for 6 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you have 5 LED lights and they're 20 watts each and they run for 8 hours a day. And really, to assess exactly what you need in a home or a business, you have to do that load calculation to determine what size storage you need. So, that's critical. Is an EV going to be enough to charge up a home? Well, depends what home it is.
Any of the audience members had any experience with using their cars at all for storage sources?
Great question.
Well, this is Drew Malman. So I have a potential customer who's got 2 Chevy Volts sitting in the garage, and he was really interested in looking at the ability, to obviously to charge them, but also to backfeed them. And depending on the vehicle, like Chevy Volts, you can't, they don't work. They're not. So some vehicles are designed where you can backfeed, and some are not. So I think we're going to start to see more of that. And I guess SolarEdge has this hub inverter now that they're promoting that it's compatible with their own EV charger. So I think we're going to start to see more of that. But people who want solar with storage, a lot of them are going to be the same people who have several EVs in the garage. So
Sure.
there's a market that's what people, but I'm seeing a couple of people that's what they want. So.
Yeah, here's a comment from John McVicker saying, I have used my Volt to power my home office for 6 hours when our main panel was replaced.
There you go.
So maybe I'll make an obvious comment, Phil, but sounds like a great topic for the open mic night.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think, the other thing ties back to what Bill was talking about with, and Andrew mentioned about the electric vehicles. We talk to people that have an EV and they say, okay, well, if there's a big storm or a big event and we have trouble getting gasoline, I want to be able to charge my car and my house to be able to have some mobility and keep things going at the house. So again, it just, it really depends on, what your goals are with this and the size of your budget too.
Yeah, when, I get asked all the time, hey, can I power up a 5,000 square foot home? Sure you can. What's your budget? And then they fall off their chair when they hear what the budget's going to be. And so, we'll see.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions? Want to come up to the end here? Any last comments? I'd like to just interject one more about Long Island Power Authority. Years ago they were Long Island Illuminating Company, Wilco, and they actually have the second highest electric rate in the nation behind Hawaii. A lot of gross mismanagement. They went bankrupt, and they've done they had a failed nuclear plant. They really turned themselves around. And in a sense, if we look at Pennsylvania and New York, we have a tale of two states. I mean, we have one state that's all in for fracking and tax exemptions for hydrocarbon production, and we have another state that's fighting fracking and moving towards doing the right thing with climate. So again, it's amazing that we can be neighbors and have just such a completely different outlook on where we're going in the future.
That's a great point, Bill. It truly is.
I just want to thank Bill Dougherty for enlightening all of us and providing this overview and giving some clarity to this very important area for homemakers as we try and be more sustainable.
And it's been a pleasure for me, and it's great to see and hear from familiar faces that I've known over the years, but with my travels kind of pulled me out of the area. So no, this was my pleasure. I really appreciate it. I appreciate Maria and what all the members do to promote sustainability in the Mid-Atlantic region and beyond. So I really appreciate the opportunity to do this.
Okay. All right. Any parting shots?
Just
okay,
a reminder,
well then,
August 13th for the book discussion. Sign up on the website.
Okay. And we hope to see you at the end of August, last Tuesday of the month. So,
Yes.
Okay. Well, thanks, Bill, for your help today, and we hope to see you around. And thank everybody else. I hope you come back and hear Doug Talabny. He's got some really good ideas on how we can help grow into a better climate and a better world. So thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks for the program.